So now let's go back to the lesson. Simplify the following square roots or radicals. Sorry. Square root of 48. Miss, if you don't know the multiplication table or if you don't know what to do, you can use the divisibility rules. Remember, you always check the units. The units is always the first number, or what we call it ones or units. 8, it's an even number, so I'm going to divide by 2. When you divide 48 by 2 on the calculator, you will get 24. So 24 times 2 gives me 28. Now at this very moment, I can split my 24 and rearrange the numbers. I will give you another example in a while how. Or I can directly split my 24 and 2. Why? Because I have multiplication. I can do this. So now 24, I can also split it into 4 times, you can choose 6 times 4 or 12 times 2. And I'll choose 12 times 2. Suppose you chose 12 times 2. Or you can choose different ones as well, okay? And you still have times the radical 2 stays the same. Pay attention here, you don't have anything power 2, so you keep it the same. Now, here I have 2 radical 2's that are the same. Remember that always those that are the same, they attract each other. I prefer if you multiply them together first. Why? Because always radical 2 and radical 2 will cancel out to 2. Why? Because this is 2 squared or 4, okay? So I will write it in details, but from now on you can directly write it as 2. So this is equal to, let me separate also the radical 12, so you will get radical 4 times radical 3 as well. And you still have radical 4. From where did you get this? From radical 2 times radical 2. Okay, you will get radical 4 because 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, you can directly write 2 if you want, but I am doing this step by step. So the square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of radical of 3 stays the same. You will get radical 3. And the square root of 4 is also 2. So now, what's 2 times 2? You have to multiply the numbers together. You cannot keep them alone. 2 times 2 is 4, and you still have times radical 3. So this is 4 radical 3. Okay? So this is my final answer. What about if I have radical 50? So if I have radical 50, this is equal to 5 times 10. Of course, you can have different numbers, but you should end up with the same answer. Let's see. This is what I meant by you can rearrange them from here. You can split them and then work like this, or you can split them from here. You can, instead of splitting it, I can write the 10 as 2 times 5. Okay, so this is from my 10. Instead of writing 10, I wrote 2 times 5. Don't you have now 2 5's? Because 5 times 5, remember, multiplication is commutative, so I can play with the order of the numbers. I don't care. So this is equal to 5 squared, right? Or 25 times 2. Now I can split them, or from here you can, from now on, if you have multiplication or division, you can directly remove this outside. Since it has power 2, you can write it out as 5. If you don't know, just continue. So split them. Square root of 5 squared is 5. Remember, because with the definition of square root, it crosses out power 2, and you still have times radical 2. So 5 times radical 2, which is 5 radical 2. Remember, this means multiplication, just like algebra. If you don't have any sign between them, it means multiplication. Square root of 52, again, this is divisible by 2. So on the calculator, you will get 26 times 2 gives me 52. You can separate them from here, or you can separate this and then separate them from here. Okay, both are correct. So 26 is equal to 13 times 2. Again, the 6 is an even number, so it's divisible by 2. I will divide by 2. You will get 13 times 2. And you still have times radical 2. Don't forget, these are radicals. You don't have powers, so you cannot remove them. But radical 2 and radical 2, these are the same. So these will give me directly 2 if you want to skip this step. Or you can say 2 times 2 is 4 and radical 4 is 2. Okay? So this is radical 13 times radical 4, which is radical 13 times 2. Remember, in multiplication is commutative, so I can switch their places. So you will get 2 times radical 13, which is 2 radical 13. Moving on to square root of 60, this is so you can make it divisible by 2, but it's easy always when you have 60, it's 6 times 10. So this is radical 6 times radical 10. I can separate them in here or here, both are correct. So this is radical 2 times radical 3, and this is radical 2 times radical 5. Now, since these are the same, I told you, miss, always search for the square roots that are the same, because they will end up with 2. And you will end up removing the square root. Why? Because radical 2 times radical 2 is radical 2 squared, or 4, okay, which is 2. And you still need to multiply the rest of the radicals because you cannot change them. They stay the same. So 3 times 5 is 15. This is in simplest form, and 2 radical 15. And here, although these are in simplest form, but you have to split them. Why? Because it's better to always split, even if these are in simplest form. Because you see here, and you have a 2 here and a 2 here, they changed. You see? Please, miss, always I advise you to split them. What about square root of 45? 9 times 5 is 45. Remember, this is any number that ends with 0 or 5 here, and it's divisible by 5. Square root of 9 times 5, which is the square root of 9 times the square root of 5, but the square root of 9 is square root of 3 squared, and the square root with power 2 cancel out, so the square root of 9 is 3. You have to memorize this from the table. Times the square root of 5, which is equal to 3 radical 5. Square root of 140, it's the square root or radical 14 times 10. So here you see I can split them like here, or you can split them from before, and I'm showing you the 2 ways. So this is 7 times 2 times 2. 7 times 2 is 14, and 2 times 5 is 10, okay? But 2 times 2 is 4. So this is radical 7 times 4 times 5. Or you can split them, radical 7 times radical 4 times radical 5. And radical 4 is what? 2. So these stay the same. So 7 times 5 is 35, but don't forget the radical, so it's radical 35, and you still have a 2. Remember, multiplication is commutative, any order is correct, so it's 2 radical 35. Square root of minus 40, sorry, so this means minus 1 times square root of 40, so it's minus 1 times 4 square root of 4 times 10. You can directly remove the 4 to become 2 from here if you want, and I'm going to split them. So this is square root of 4 times the 10. The 10 is radical 10 is radical 2 times radical 5. So this is minus 1 times the square root of 4 becomes 2, and you have still radical 2 and radical 5. They stay the same. What's my minus 1 times 2? It's minus 2. And you still have radical 2 times radical 4, which is radical 10. So my answer is minus 2 radical 10. Moving on to 3 radical 56. It's 3 times radical 56. Remember, this is divisible by 2, so I'm going to divide by 2. 28 times 2. So it's 3 times. Again, you can split them like here, or I'm going to split them inside, then you can split them. So this is 3 times. Now 14 times 2 is 28, okay? So I'm going to rearrange it. 2 times 2 is 4. So this is 14 times 4 now, okay? I will split them. So this is 3 times radical 7 times radical 2 times radical 4. Remember, radical 4 gives me 2. And now I multiply the numbers together. 3 times 2 is 6. And the radical 7 times radical 2 together is radical 14. Minus 2 radical 120. 12 times 10. It's the easiest one. Remember, 12 I can write it as 4 times 3. And radical 10 I can write it as radical 2 times radical 5. So radical 4 is 2. And you have minus 2, and you still have radical 3 times radical 2 times radical 5. And here these are already in simplest form, so I will do the numbers together. Minus 2 times 2 is minus 4. What about these 3? If you multiply them, let's take 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 3 is 30, so it's radical 30. So this is my final answer.